Certain scars penetrate the spirit far more profoundly than any bodily agony, particularly when they're carved by the one you cherished and relied on above all others. Up until that devastating evening, I was utterly convinced I was the luckiest woman alive. That illusion crumbled when my husband's brutal kick fractured not just the bone in my leg, but my very soul and faith in him. Yet in the midst of that profound gloom and hopelessness, as I gazed into the wide, innocent eyes of my 4-year-old daughter, a glimmer of hope started to emerge. The relentless downpour hammered against the window pane, echoing the savage intensity of the figure looming over me. A searing torment ignited in my left calf and surged upward to my skull, silencing any cry I might have uttered. All I could do was huddle on the icy tile, clamping down on my lips until blood trickled out. My sight grew hazy and unfocused, yet the polished gleam of Damon's shoes, halting inches from my face, remained starkly vivid and horrifying. He crouched low, seized a fistful of my hair, yanking my head backward before I could muster the slightest pushback. The striking features I'd once adored were twisted in fury, flushed crimson, and grotesquely warped. How could you defy me like that, you leech? All I wanted was $50,000 for the venture, and you won't even provide it. Do you want to watch me reduced to panhandling on the sidewalks? Each syllable stabbed like a blade into my core. Leech. I'd abandoned my position at a solid company to focus entirely on raising Layla, our daughter, and nurturing our home life, exactly as he'd insisted. I'd handed over every penny of my savings, plus the proceeds from selling the apartment my parents had bequeathed me upon our wedding, all to fund his so-called enterprise. And yet, to him, I amounted to nothing but a leech. Struggling to contain the sobs threatening to spill, I managed to whisper through gritted teeth, "Seriously, I truly have nothing left. Darling, I handed over my final dollars last month." "Liar," Damon bellowed. His fingers dug deeper into my scalp. "Didn't your foster parents bequeath you a property when they died? You offloaded it and stashed the cash without telling me, right? Admit it now." That property was the sole memento from my foster family, which I'd liquidated 3 years prior to cover what he swore was emergency heart treatment during his illness. He'd apparently erased it from memory, but repeating the truth felt impossible amid the agony overtaking me. My fractured limb dominated every thought. On some primal level, I sensed grave damage. Beyond the relentless pulsing, my leg registered no other sensation. Drenched in a mix of perspiration and anguish, I begged hoarsely, "Stop, I beg you, please stop. My leg is killing me." Damon unleashed a harsh, bone-chilling chuckle. He released my hair, sending my skull crashing onto the hard surface. "Good. Let it throb. Perhaps it'll finally drill some obedience into that know-it-all streak of yours." He hurled the icy retort, strode to the couch, and snatched his cell. Then, like he'd morphed into someone else entirely, he shifted to a syrupy, affectionate tone. "Yeah, sweetheart, I just got your message. Finishing up some business here. I'll be there soon to hold you and the boy." "Absolutely. I miss you two terribly." The boy. My pulse froze. No way I'd imagined it. Who on earth was on the line? What child? Bewilderment flooded my thoughts, dwarfing the bodily torment with a sharper psychological blow. Right then, a stifled noise drifted from the ajar door of my girl's bedroom. How much had she overheard? The little one crouched behind it, her gaze enormous and brimming with tears, her tiny palms pressed over her mouth to muffle the whimpers. The sight shattered me anew. She'd taken in the whole horror. She'd endured the full nightmare unfolding. Damon caught the sound too, slamming the call short and shooting a venomous stare her way. "And what's with the waterworks? Quit the racket and retreat to your space. Shut the door tight." Layla quivered violently from crown to toe, frozen in place. Her eyes darted to mine, brimming with terror, yet sparkling with a wisdom far beyond her tender years. In that fleeting moment amid the utter devastation, a tiny flame of possibility flickered to life. I met her stare, enduring the torment to give a faint headshake. Don't. Then, with utmost subtlety, I gestured toward my phone on the end table by the couch. My expression carried a frantic appeal. Whether my 4-year-old could grasp the plan was uncertain, but Layla proved sharper than I'd realized. She glanced between my pointing finger and my face, then blinked in comprehension. A tiny nod followed, imperceptible to anyone but me. Seizing the chance as Damon pivoted to the window for a smoke, Layla padded over silently on bare feet, as stealthy as a shadow. My chest hammered wildly on the verge of bursting. God, keep his back turned, I implored inwardly. As she neared the table, she faked a stumble with a sharp, "Ow!" tumbling ahead. The device tumbled from the surface, landing softly on the plush carpet thanks to her nudge. "Such a klutz," Damon snapped. Without a backward glance, he muttered, "It's over." Ila snatched the phone in a flash. Rather than setting it down on the table, she clutched it to her heart and slipped beneath the table, vanishing from Damon's view. I noticed her delicate fingers shaking as they pressed against the display. The passcode was her birthday. I'd shown her how to use it just in case of trouble. The screen glowed to life, and I observed her select the Contacts app. With her little finger, she scrolled through the entries until she reached the one I'd labeled as Dear Grandpa. She pressed the phone to her ear, her lips pressed firmly together. No words emerged at first. I could tell fear gripped her, yet she pushed forward with everything she had. At last, my little girl's voice emerged, quivering and strangled, murmuring words into the phone that etched themselves forever in my memory. "Grandpa, Grandpa, Mommy's about to die." Silence hung on the line. 1 second, 2, 3. That quiet stretched like forever in the charged atmosphere. Despair nearly overtook me, but then a rich, reassuring, commanding tone filtered from the tiny speaker. It was hushed, yet remarkably clear. "Ila, sweetheart, you handled that perfectly. Can you let Grandpa know your location?" The profound, commanding timbre of Grandpa's voice exploded like a lifeline, yanking me from my frozen dread in an instant. Such a basic query, yet it wrapped me in an odd blanket of safety, reminding me I wasn't facing this solo anymore. I leaned in close to the device my daughter gripped. My words shook, but they rang out steadier than moments before. "Grandpa, this is Sophia." Struggling, I recited the details of that unassuming housing block in the South Bronx that Damon had arranged, and that had morphed into pure torment. Got it. Grandpa's reply held zero doubt. "Barricade yourselves in a room. Secure the lock and don't let anyone in, not even your spouse. Grandpa's on his way." The connection ended, and the screen faded to black. Ila turned to me, tears brimming in her eyes. Terror lingered, but a spark of optimism flickered there now. I pulled her into a fierce embrace. My pulse still hammered, though not from panic this time. It stemmed from a fierce certainty and anticipation that this awful ordeal was nearing its close. I scooped my daughter up and headed to the bathroom, swiftly dabbing away the tear tracks from both our faces with soothing warm water. Composure was essential. I needed to project strength for her sake. No clue how Grandpa would get here or what resources he'd bring, but like always since my early days, my faith in him was absolute. Minutes dragged on oppressively. Perched on the bed with my arms around my child, I listened intently for any noises beyond. The downpour had eased, leaving only the steady patter of water on the tin roof. Roughly 20 minutes in, an odd rumble echoed from the building's entrance. Not the typical buzz of a bike. It was the guttural growl of premium cars maneuvering into the tight lane. Tires squealed to a halt next, followed by the solid thuds of doors shutting. My chest tightened. That had to be Grandpa. No doubt. Before I could move, steady strides from multiple figures neared our unit. These weren't like Damon's haphazard steps. They pulsed with purpose, dominance, and a chilling presence. Suddenly, the door opposite ours flew wide, and the landlady's piercing shout rang out. "What's all this commotion in the dead of night? Who do you want?" Her outburst halted abruptly, swapped for a sharp intake of breath. I glanced through the peephole and froze at the sight outside. No lone figure confronted her. Instead, 4 robust guys in dark suits stood stone-faced, like they'd stepped from a thriller film, and right among them was my grandpa. He bore little resemblance to the gentle elder from my memories. Dressed in a flawlessly fitted gray suit, he stood tall, supported by a polished ebony walking stick topped with silver. His hair gleamed fully silver, but his gaze burned with such sharp command that it pinned anyone who met it. "Which unit belongs to Sophia?" he inquired. His tone stayed even, but its gravity made even the usually loquacious landlady quiver as she gestured at our door. Grandpa inclined his head, signaled once, and a pair of the guards moved swiftly toward us. "Sophia, it's Grandpa. Let me in." At the sound of that cherished voice, I hurried to unlock it. The moment it swung open, my restraint shattered and I crumpled into sobs against him. Grandpa. He enveloped me firmly, his palm gently stroking my quaking shoulders. "Hush now. Everything's finished. Grandpa's arrived. No harm will come to you ever again." Right then, the growl of Damon's motorcycle pierced the air at the street gate. He'd likely wrapped up his chat with his lover and was heading back to feign the caring partner. Spotting the upscale vehicles clogging the road and the suited men guarding the entrance, his complexion drained to ashen. He ditched the motorcycle haphazardly, and a figure charged toward us, bellowing, "What's happening here? Who the hell are you all?" When he spotted me cradled in Grandpa's embrace, his confusion shifted to fury and shock. "Sophia, who's this geezer?" he barked, jabbing a finger accusingly at my grandfather. Grandpa pivoted deliberately. His stare, keen like daggers, locked onto Damon. That look was so chilling it chilled the atmosphere itself. "So you're Damon, my granddaughter's spouse. Big deal. What gives you the right to barge into another person's residence?" Damon, clueless about the man he faced, kept up his belligerent stance. "My identity doesn't matter." Grandpa's tone rumbled low and solemn. "What counts is the harm you inflicted on my granddaughter moments ago." With those words, Grandpa's eyes dropped to my puffed-up leg. One bodyguard at his side caught the cue right away and advanced. His words cut like ice. "Damon Garrett, you're being detained for spousal abuse. You're coming along with us." "What?" "Abuse. Cut the crap without evidence," Damon fired back, his voice rising in panic. "The proof lies in the wounds on my granddaughter's frame," Grandpa declared. "Plus the distress call from my great-granddaughter." Damon went mute, his face draining to ashen. He glanced at me, then at Illa peeking from behind, her expression one of utter incredulity. He'd never dreamed the child he'd dismissed could dismantle his world. Unable to protest, a pair of bodyguards closed in and gripped his elbows tight. "Hey, back off! Release me, Sophia! Speak up! You really want your man locked up?" he hollered, thrashing wildly. I simply stared back wordlessly. Any warmth had vanished from my gaze, replaced by scorn and icy detachment. Grandpa nodded to yet another guard, who promptly passed a hefty wad of bills to the landlord. That ought to settle the back rent this guy skipped and make up for the hassle. From this point on, none of this occurred. Clear. The landlord's eyes bulged at the cash, and she bobbed her head vigorously. "Absolutely, sure thing. I saw zilch. I know nada." The matter wrapped up swiftly and neatly. Grandpa faced me once more, his voice softening to its tender warmth. "All right, kiddo. Time to head home." He scooped Isla up gently. The little one, sensing total security, nestled her cheek against his torso. A third guard assisted my limping steps. They guided me into a sleek, high-end vehicle. A lady in a crisp white uniform sat inside, ready. "That's our family physician," Grandpa clarified. "She'll patch you up initially." The vehicle eased forward, departing the humble flat, and a raging spouse escorted off by authorities. I peered through the glass. New York City's evening skyline still sparkled with brilliant glows, yet inside me, a massive tempest was just igniting, and by this journey's close, I'd uncover not just reality, but a kin, and sanctuary beyond my wildest hopes. The upscale car cruised the urban darkness. Its motion was whisper quiet, a far cry from the jammed trains or Damon's rusty bike I'd known so well. Within, the medic carefully cleaned and wrapped the gashes on my limb. Luckily, no break, though the bruising ran deep enough to demand downtime. Hila, drained from sheer terror, had drifted into a profound slumber against her great-grandpa's hold. Her serene, cherubic features tugged at my soul once more. Without Hila's plea for aid, what fate awaited us that evening? I turned to the gentleman beside me, the one my girl dubbed Grandpa. In my hazy recollections, his image lingered as faint echoes. I'd been left at an orphanage right after birth, then taken in by kind government workers. They lacked wealth, but our place brimmed with warmth. My foster dad, Franklin Patterson, engineered projects for a building firm. Quiet by nature, he cherished his spouse and child deeply. My foster mom, Martha Patterson, taught young kids in elementary school. She showered me with hugs and instilled solid values. I cherished them like blood kin and felt endless thanks. Amid those joyful early days, one figure stood out occasionally, a gentleman my folks addressed with deference as Mr. Alexander. At the time, Alexander Monroe headed the building conglomerate, employing my foster father, and they shared a close bond. I recall his holiday visits, arms full of presents for our home. Childless and bereaved early in life, he held a unique affection for me. I'd perch on his lap. He'd run fingers through my locks and murmur, "This child's clever and full of spark. She'll surely rise to greatness." His eyes always beamed with kindness. Plus, he funded my schooling from elementary all the way through university, claiming knowledge was the best bet one could make. My adoptive parents demurred at first, but he pressed on, insisting it was merely his way to contribute. His cherished granddaughter. Disaster hit during my senior year at university. My adoptive folks, away on a work excursion, perished in a sudden car crash. My entire existence shattered. In that deepest pit of sorrow, Mr. Alexander stepped up to manage the entire burial process and offered me comfort and support. "Your folks may be gone," he told me, "but you've got me now. Treat me as your kin from here on out." Later, Grandpa assisted in landing me a reliable position at a branch of the corporation. Gradually, my existence steadied, and the grief began to ebb. That's when Damon entered the picture. He joined the sales team as a fresh hire, 2 years my senior. Tall and striking, with a silver tongue and an air of drive, he shared tales of his tough upbringing and the battles he'd waged to reach his spot. Craving some support amid the ache of family loss, I was drawn to his seeming genuineness and resolve. We tumbled into romance. I can still vividly picture Grandpa's expression the initial time I presented Damon to him. He uttered little, merely watching quietly. That evening, he summoned me to his study. "Sophia," he intoned solemnly, "the fellow appears clever, but his eyes don't ring true. I won't meddle in your romance, yet stay vigilant. One can never truly glimpse another's soul." Caught up in passion at the time, I brushed off his caution. I figured he was overly wary, and Damon struck me as decent. I even rationalized it, supposing his modest origins might make him a tad guarded. Mr. Alexander merely exhaled deeply and held his tongue. A year on, we tied the knot. Mr. Alexander gifted me an opulent apartment on Park Avenue along with a generous cash amount as a dowry, explaining it stemmed from funds my adoptive parents had earmarked for me. Post-ceremony, Damon insisted he wouldn't rely on my relatives and aimed to launch his venture. He unveiled a persuasive proposal for the enterprise. Placing complete faith in my spouse, I handed over all my reserves and the proceeds from offloading the apartment Grandpa had bestowed. No second thoughts. When Hila arrived, Damon suggested I remain at home to nurture the little one while he oversaw the funds. Once more, I heeded him, unaware it marked the onset of my downfall. Damon's venture faltered from the start. He grumbled endlessly about hurdles and sought extra funds repeatedly. I'd exhausted my resources by then. All I could do was rally him. Bit by bit, his demeanor shifted. He grew snappish, frequently lashing out verbally. Disputes escalated and eventually, physical blows followed. Initially just under alcohol's influence, but soon it turned routine. He vented frustrations on me whenever setbacks arose. For Illa's sake and a sliver of optimism that reform might come, I bore it all. I refrained from confiding in Mr. Alexander, dreading his concern or dismay over my decision. I bottled up the torment solo until this fateful evening when boundaries shattered. The vehicle pulled up to a grand, traditional estate, boasting an expansive lawn in the Hamptons, Mr. Alexander's haven since stepping back from duties, a sight I'd rarely graced. Stepping inside, the hushed, dignified vibe of the dwelling oddly soothed me. Mr. Alexander guided us to a generous chamber upstairs. "This belonged to your adoptive mother," he explained. "Henceforth, it's your sanctuary." I scanned the space. Every detail gleamed with precise upkeep. Atop the bureau, a snapshot of my adoptive parent beaming with joy remained untouched. Fresh tears surfaced. After all those years, I'd come back to my roots. That evening, for the first occasion in ages, slumber came profound and undisturbed. No visions of brutality, no barbs. I rested serene, enveloped in familial warmth, certain that dawn would usher in fresh beginnings and battles. Yet this round, I'd face them with allies. Come morning, sunlight filtered through the vast pane, casting golden patches across the timbered planks. My limbs still ached sharply, though my thoughts felt oddly lucid and focused. Illa slumbered deeply next to me, likely her initial restful night following endless terror. I slipped from the sheets quietly to avoid stirring her. Catching my reflection in the expansive dressing glass, I recoiled. The figure staring back appeared worn and weary. Puffy lids framed her eyes, skin ashen, with a subtle mark on her jaw from Damon's strike the prior night. Yet beneath that fatigued stare, a spark of fury and resolve ignited. This existence had to end. For my own sake and hers, transformation was essential. I bathed and donned fresh casual attire laid out by the household help. Descending to the breakfast area, I discovered a lavish spread awaiting on the table. Grandpa perused the paper, and nearby perched a man in his 40s, exuding scholarly poise, bespectacled and clad in a flawless. As I descended the stairs, Grandpa's face lit up with a warm grin, the gentle expression I'd always known returning fully. "Slept well, my dear. Join us for some food. I'd love for you to meet Mr. Davis. He's my private lawyer and closest confidant." I bent forward to say hello to Mr. Davis, who rose politely and clasped my hand. "Good morning, Miss Hemphill. The president has briefed me already. I'm truly sorry for your ordeal, but relieved you're safe now." The meal unfolded in a light, unburdened vibe. Grandpa and Mr. Davis gently probed into my circumstances without reopening old scars. They shifted to discussions of upcoming strategies, Layla's schooling, and relaxing spots that could ease my mind. Their words guided me toward brighter horizons. Once we'd eaten, we moved to Grandpa's library, where towering shelves brimmed with volumes both ancient and recent. The room carried a dignified, scholarly aura. "Sophia," Grandpa started, his tone turning grave, "we can't waste time on sorrow. Action is needed, and fast." Mr. Davis picked up, flipping open his satchel and extracting a stack of documents. "Ms. Hemphill, per the President's directives, we've launched an initial probe into Damon Garrett's affairs. Our top priority is to lock down all shared assets right away, blocking any chance of him siphoning resources. Joint holdings." I shook my head. "That's impossible. We're wiped clean. Every penny I owned went to his venture." Mr. Davis offered a measured, expert smile. "Not quite. You're legally wed still, so a full audit is essential. Plus, we'll track precisely where your contributions landed." Grandpa agreed with a nod. "Precisely. That rogue didn't just flop in business. Something deeper's at play." Davis, dig into every transaction he's made the past 3 years. Miss nothing. Absolutely, President, Mr. Davis assured him. We've had eyes on him since yesterday evening. He's free on bond, yet oddly calm. No signs of anxiety. Strangely enough, this morning, our contact spotted him at a fancy coffee spot with a lady. My pulse quickened at the news. Who was she? My words quivered just a bit. We're confirming her details, but one fact stands out. They weren't casual pals. Mr. Davis slid over a distant shot image. It was fuzzy, but it captured Damon leaning in close to the woman, his fingers tenderly atop hers. And this is key, Mr. Davis went on. Soon after you departed the flat, he came back. Our observer caught him on a call, venting sharply. The scheme's derailed. That foolish lady's tougher than expected. Time for a new approach. The scheme, that foolish lady. It was obvious he meant me, our family, and Grandpa. So the chaos from the previous night wasn't mere temper. It was a calculated plot I knew nothing of. With each revelation, the mess grew denser and more alarming. One additional point, Miss Hempel, Mr. Davis added. On paper, we've got solid proof for assault charges. But to win guardianship of young Ella and hit him harder will require stronger proof of his parental failures and further crimes. Grandpa fixed his steady eyes on me. Sophia, I realize this will test you deeply, but steel yourself. It's your battle now. Do you prefer a quick split, some payout, and moving on? Or shall we push fully, unmask his real nature, and claim retribution for your lost years? I met Grandpa's gaze, then Mr. Davis's. Rage and resolve blazed hot within me. I'd sacrificed enough already. Losing my girl was unthinkable, and letting that destroyer escape unscathed was unbearable. I choose to fight to the end, I declared, my tone steady and unyielding now. He owes for it all. Grandpa gave an approving nod. That's my girl, let's launch our strategy. I remained in the library with Grandpa and Mr. Davis through the day. They mapped out a thorough, phased blueprint. Once a helpless target, I now formed the core of the impending courtroom and mental skirmish. The road ahead looked daunting, yet fear had vanished. No longer isolated against icy barriers, I stood backed by a vast powerhouse poised to shield and bolster me. In the days that followed, I shelved my private anguish and dove into the blueprint from Grandpa and Mr. Davis. The Hampton estate turned into our base of operations. Daily, Mr. Davis arrived with updates and breakdowns of fresh intel. From a typical homemaker, I started grasping jargon in law and finance that was all new to me. I pored over the files he supplied, absorbing them with keen interest. To grasp the full scope of the battle ahead, I needed to dive deep into every detail. My grandfather stayed out of the hands-on probing, but he guided the overall strategy and tapped into his vast web of connections to aid our efforts. His steady presence and sage advice kept me grounded emotionally. As our initial and vital move, Mr. Davis filed an urgent court petition in my name to lock down every bank account tied to us. At the same time, he petitioned the appropriate authorities to block any buying, selling, or shifting of associated properties. This was our opening salvo, aimed at slamming the door on Damon's escape routes and stopping him from siphoning off whatever funds were left. Just as we anticipated, it backed him into a desperate frenzy. He bombarded me with calls and texts non-stop. At the outset, he tried honeyed pleas, imploring me to abandon the legal action. Sophia, why go through with this? Why lock up the accounts? I desperately need those funds for a venture. If you proceed, you're destroying me. When I ignored him, he switched gears and started hurling menaces. Fine then. You figure you're tough now with that elderly guardian watching your back. Pay attention. Don't drive me to the edge. If you do, you and your little girl won't walk away without scars. Rather than intimidating me, those notes just stoked my fury. I sent them all straight to Mr. Davis, where they served as damning proof of his aggressive and spiteful side. In the meantime, Mr. Davis's crew operated with remarkable speed. Within merely 3 days, they delivered the initial findings. Mr. Davis laid out a stack of documents across Grandpa's expansive mahogany table. "Ms. Hempel, we've uncovered our first clue," he announced, jabbing at a hefty bank record. "These are the transaction logs showing the funds you, Miss Hempel, sent to Damon Garrett's account during the past 3 years. The sum tops $500,000. That's no trivial figure." I scanned the numbers on the page and a sharp ache hit my heart. That $500,000 represented my entire nest egg plus the proceeds from selling my adoptive parents' home. I'd handed it over freely, only to be repaid with the most painful deception. Now for the key revelation. Mr. Davis flipped to a different sheet. None of that cash, once it hit Mr. Garrett's account, went toward any building endeavor like he insisted. Rather, it got split up and funneled through a maze of accounts in an intricate setup, ultimately landing in one central spot. He highlighted a name on the record. This one links to a business entity known as Golden Future Investments and Development LLC. Golden Future. I creased my brow. The name rang no bells. "That's to be expected," Mr. Davis replied. "The firm got established roughly 3 years back, right when Mr. Garrett began mentioning his business plans, and he's not listed as the authorized rep." He slid over another file. It was a concise business registration. I caught my breath and checked the management details. A strange name jumped out. Eliza Sterling. "Who exactly is Eliza Sterling?" Grandpa inquired, his voice resonant and commanding. "She's the lady Damon Garrett was seen chatting with at that coffee shop recently." Mr. Davis produced a sharper image. There, a striking woman in her 20s, elegant and poised, beamed warmly beside Damon. It all clicked into place. No legitimate venture existed. Golden Future was nothing but a facade, a cover to snatch my money under the guise of legality. Using my funds, he'd launched a venture for his lover, crafting a prosperous path for the two of them, one forged from my hardships and sorrow. An icy anger surged through me. He'd betrayed me not just in love, but had swindled me outright. "And what's the location of this outfit?" I demanded steadily. "Its official address is in a top-tier office tower on 5th Avenue, but our investigators checked it out, and it's basically a mailbox setup with minimal operations. That said, we've tracked down where this Eliza Sterling resides. It's a lavish 2-level unit in a high-end residential tower in the Upper East Side area," Mr. Davis explained. Grandpa, who'd been quiet up to that point, finally chimed in. A fierce spark lit his gaze. "Davis, dig deeper into that Eliza Sterling, her background, her ties, the works. I need the complete picture, and stay on top of Damon's activities too. I'm concerned this goes beyond mere infidelity and theft." "Yes, sir." Grandpa's statement sent a shiver racing along my spine. He was spot on. How could someone as youthful as Eliza Sterling pull off such a sophisticated ruse alongside Damon? There had to be another player pulling strings. And was Damon, with his brutish, avaricious ways, really clever enough to mastermind it all? The fragments of the mystery were aligning, yet they hinted at a far grander plot and deeper enigmas than I'd ever pictured. I realized this struggle would prove far more intricate and perilous than I'd bargained for. The days that followed dragged on endlessly. With every hour that ticked by, an impatient fire scorched my chest. I fretted over my future, but most of all, I agonized. Regarding Illa, the little one was far too innocent to grasp the tempest that had shattered our home. She simply puzzled over why her dad was nowhere to be seen and why her mom always seemed so downcast. I pulled her close and spun a tale, assuring her that her father was away on an extended work journey. Each falsehood I uttered pierced my soul like a dagger. As I wrestled with a whirlwind of feelings, Mr. Davis's crew, along with the investigators Grandpa had brought on board, kept at it without pause. They gathered fragments of the reality painstakingly, like diligent workers harvesting sweet essence amid a maze of deceptions and pitfalls. One afternoon, Mr. Davis reached out to me. His tone carried an unusual gravity. "Ms. Hempel, would you mind stopping by my office immediately? We've uncovered some fresh findings, and I believe it's best if you view them in person." A chill of dread settled over me. I entrusted Ela to a household helper and rushed downtown to Mr. Davis's suite. His workspace occupied the penthouse level of a towering building, offering a breathtaking panorama of Manhattan. Yet right then, despite the city's vibrant glow, the world appeared utterly dull and lifeless to me. Mr. Davis stood ready for me in the meeting area. Spread across the expansive desk lay multiple files and a computer. "Take a chair," he murmured gently. "What we're about to review could unsettle you deeply. Brace yourself." I gave a slight nod, clenching my fingers in my lap. "Go ahead, I'm ready for anything." Mr. Davis let out a heavy breath. He angled the laptop display my way. We've delved deeper into Eliza Sterling. She's far from ordinary. On the surface, she's leading a fledgling company, but her background is intricate. And crucially, her connection to Damon Garrett goes back much further than we'd thought. He hit play. Images flickered to life on the monitor. The initial shot captured Damon and Eliza Sterling strolling arm in arm along a Miami shoreline. The timestamp marked it roughly 3 years prior, mere months following my sale of my adoptive parents' property to cover Damon's alleged cardiac procedure. Clearly, that health crisis was fabricated too, a scheme to squeeze out the final substantial sum I possessed. Those funds had financed his getaway with his lover and the launch of their fresh existence. A weighty burden pressed on my chest, hindering each inhale, but the real devastation lay ahead. Mr. Davis advanced to the subsequent images. These dated from the prior 2 years, times that rightfully belonged to me and my girls. Damon gently spoon-feeding a plump infant boy. Damon steadily guiding the toddler's first steps inside an opulent residence. Damon, Eliza, and the boy joyfully extinguishing candles on a cake, their faces beaming with delight. That picture of their idyllic, blissful household cut like a blade. Who's that boy? My words quivered beyond control. He's Damon Garrett and Eliza Sterling's boy, Mr. Davis replied, his own voice turning grave. Micah is his name. He's past 2 years now. Damon Garrett has been misleading you while maintaining 2 separate lives. Micah. The name echoed in my mind. Even his secret son's moniker echoed our daughter Layla's. His heartlessness had no limits. So this was the reality. This was the authentic visage of the loyal spouse I'd backed through every sacrifice. Betrayal wasn't his only sin. He'd built an entire parallel family. He parented another youngster. The savings I'd amassed and loans I'd taken to aid him went not to ventures, but to sustain his other partner. I'd morphed into a tireless provider, toiling away for someone else's joy. This revelation stung worse than any physical blow. It demeaned me, shamed every bit of devotion I'd offered. I remained still. Sobs flowed without stop. Yet these weren't signs of frailty anymore. They mourned my naivety, my squandered early years in total deception. "Miss Hempel," Mr. Davis extended a handkerchief. "I realize it's tough to swallow, but we must confront it. This proof delivers a fatal strike. Proving he fathered a child and hid it seals that he seriously neglected his spousal and parental obligations. In asset splits and Ela's guardianship, the judge will rule in your favor." I dried my face and raised my chin. My eyes hardened like forged metal. "Custody won't be his only loss, counselor," I declared resolutely. "I demand he answer for the swindling and misappropriation, too. I want him and that woman utterly ruined in society's eyes." Mr. Davis inclined his head. "That's exactly our forthcoming move." He slid over yet another dossier. Their outfit, Golden Future, isn't merely a cover for laundering cash. They're tangled in various illicit dealings and violations. We're amassing additional proof on tax dodging and business scams right now. The trap is tightening, Ms. Hempel. I departed the lawyer's premises as the urban glows flickered to life. I sensed a void within, yet surged with resolve. Every trace of affection or bond to that individual had evaporated. What lingered was a parent's fierce drive to secure fairness for her tomorrow and her children. Defeat wasn't an option, as my allies and I quietly and systematically drew the judicial snare. Damon and his lover appeared oblivious to the brewing trouble on their end, maybe blinded by their own arrogance. Days passed without them reaching me, and with his finances locked down, Damon finally grasped that things were far more complicated than he'd imagined. He couldn't keep up the facade of the wronged, suffering spouse any longer. So, he pulled out his final ace, appealing to what he figured was a soft-hearted, devoted soul, me through his mom, my mother-in-law. One morning, as I was out in the yard with Isla, a staffer rushed over with the news. "Ma'am, there's an elderly lady at the entrance claiming she's your mother-in-law and she's making a fuss." My pulse quickened. My mother-in-law. When was the last time I'd laid eyes on her? Post-wedding, she'd only dropped by our place a handful of times. A straightforward rural type, she doted on her boy fiercely, which made her strict and unyielding toward me as her son's wife. To her, Damon could do no wrong. Every slip-up of his was excusable. Clearly, this wasn't a social call to check on my well-being. "Bring her inside," I instructed the staffer steadily. Scooping up Illa, I suggested she head off to spend time with her great-grandparents, then made my way solo to the sitting area. I was determined to handle this confrontation on my own. The moment she spotted me, my mother-in-law dashed forward, not to lash out or berate, but to drop to her knees and sob uncontrollably. "Sophia, my child, how could you be this heartless? Are you trying to destroy my Damon?" Her outburst caught me off guard. It was pure theater, nothing I'd anticipated. The household help watched us with wide-eyed interest. "Mother-in-law, stand up, please. Let's talk this through without the hysterics," I urged, reaching to assist her, but she dug in her heels, gripping my ankles tight. "No, I stay down here until you vow to pardon my Damon. He's all I have. If something happens to him, how will I go on?" Her pleas turned into a wrenching wail. She claimed Damon had been a wreck ever since I walked out. No appetite, no rest, just booze, and his ventures were stalled. He adored me deeply, she insisted, and all his actions aimed to secure a brighter future for us. He just snapped under pressure. Hitting you was inexcusable. I won't defend that, but it shattered him too. He's sorry now. You're his partner. How can you drive your man to ruin? Freezing his funds, filing charges, aiming to lock him away. If prison takes him, who's looking after our Illa? Who'll shape her tomorrow? Her barbs struck right at my vulnerabilities, our marriage vows, our daughter's prospects. She sketched Damon as a dutiful, penitent spouse and dad teetering on collapse over one rash error. It was so convincingly staged that, without those incriminating images and audio, I might have bought into it. Instead, I could only smirk inwardly. Composed, I disentangled from her grasp and retreated a pace. Fixing my gaze on the performer before me, I spoke in an icy, detached tone. "Mother-in-law." Surprise flickered in her eyes as she peered up from the ground. No more tears, just shock and fury. "What do you mean? What are you implying?" "Head home and relay this to your son. If he's genuinely sorry, let him turn himself in at the court and lay it all out. Otherwise, if he keeps up the pretense, we'll settle it before a judge." You spiteful snake," she spat, leaping to her feet. "It was a curse the day Damon tied himself to trash like you. Think your wealth and pull let you crush us. Mark my words, you'll pay for this." She unleashed a torrent of vile slurs and oaths I'd never associated with her, but they bounced off me now. I simply observed her mutely, like some low-budget melodrama. "Summon a worker," I directed evenly. "See this woman off the property." Security stepped in promptly, guiding her toward the exit. She kicked and hollered, but two strong guys were too much for her. "You'll live to regret it, you vile creature. I won't sit back and watch." Her shouts echoed even beyond the entrance. Peace settled over the home again, yet turmoil swirled within. Her flop of a show had bombed, but it drove home a harsh truth. They weren't backing down. Self-interest and avarice ran marrow deep in them. They'd stoop to any low tactic for their gain, and I sensed that after this emotional ploy, something uglier was inbound. Readiness was essential. This battle went beyond the law books. It was a mind game and a fight for image. Her botched theatrics showed me I couldn't just react anymore, staying on the back foot as they struck. The moment had arrived to switch gears. I resolved to introduce myself to them and the entire world under an entirely new persona. Gone was Sophia, the timid and fragile spouse. In her place emerged Sophia Monroe, vice president of the Monroe Group, a commanding, poised figure whom no one would dare to belittle. This shift went beyond merely schooling Damon and his kin. It was my way of reclaiming my identity, unearthing the core of myself that had vanished amid the torment of my nightmarish union. It began with my outward look. I ditched the plain, muted loungewear I'd grown accustomed to. Grandpa summoned New York's top stylists and designers straight to the estate. They arrived with the freshest lines from premier high-end labels. I sampled it all, from fluid silk gowns to precisely fitted business attire and sparkling formal wear. Each outfit swap made me feel like I was shedding my old self. My lengthy locks, once perpetually tied back in a simple ponytail, were reshaped by skilled pros into lush, flowing waves, tinted a refined, upscale ash brown. The cosmetics experts carefully enhanced my features, avoiding any overkill. They concealed weariness, accentuated my traits, and infused a vibe of sharp, scholarly command. Gazing into the mirror, I barely recognized the reflection. This lady staring back was unfamiliar, yet achingly recognizable, the version of me I'd always meant to embody. A profound, vibrant assurance started to unfurl deep inside. Yet the most profound evolution lay inward in my mindset and behavior. I dove headfirst into the company's operations. No more passive observer at boardroom sessions. I proactively delved into initiatives, pored over balance sheets, and grasped the status of every branch. The academic insights I'd assumed were lost forever resurfaced, blending with the harsh realities of experience to offer a more grounded, insightful perspective on corporate dynamics. I began voicing insights and suggestions during discussions. Initially, I caught dubious stares, particularly from veteran managers who'd long been loyal to Grandpa. They likely still viewed me as the indulged heiress, but I pressed on undeterred. Backed by data, reasoned breakdowns, and incisive points, I gradually won them over. Bit by bit, their regard turned authentic and respectful. Grandpa watched my progress quietly, though his gaze brimmed with approval. He began assigning me weightier responsibilities, drawing me into key dealings with major allies. The corporate arena is the harshest arena of combat, he advised me. It forges resilience and grit beyond what any classroom can provide, and he proved spot on. Each deal, each career hurdle became a priceless tutorial. I mastered staying composed amid tension, deciphering hidden motives, and delivering decisive, accurate choices. My self-assurance now stemmed not from Grandpa's support, but from my personal prowess and dedication. Inquisitive gazes no longer unnerved me, and public addresses ceased to make me quiver. I'd rediscovered my authentic voice. This metamorphosis extended beyond the office. I set about reconstructing my circle of connections. I made appearances at sector galas and philanthropic gatherings, showcasing a refreshed facade, a graceful, striking, clever, and magnetic executive. The press moved away from labeling me the casualty of a lurid split, instead hailing the return of the Monroe dynasty's heir, the emerging powerhouse in industry circles. I was certain word of this would filter back to Damon. I craved for him to witness it, to grasp that the partner he'd discarded and scorned had ascended to heights forever beyond his grasp. I yearned for his remorse, yet on a profounder level, this rebirth was mine alone. It proclaimed that no worthless individual could shatter my existence. I merited greater joy, a more radiant path ahead, and I intended to craft it through my own labors. The moment had arrived for the phoenix, scorched by treachery's fire, to soar anew from the ruins, more radiant and formidable than before. Roughly 1 month into my formal role at the firm, my routine had transformed utterly. Days brimmed with duties, conferences, and travel for commerce. This whirlwind served as the ideal balm, banishing sorrow and sharpening focus on what lay ahead. My profile as the Monroe Group's vice president cropped up more frequently in headlines. I felt confident Damon and his relatives had noticed and were aware, yet oddly they maintained total quiet. No outreach, no notes, no uproar. That hush left me slightly on edge. Were they scheming in the shadows, or had fear finally subdued them into retreat? Regardless, vigilance was essential. I directed Mr. Davis's crew to keep compiling proof and gearing up for the impending court battle. One laid-back Saturday post a grueling week, I opted for some well-earned downtime. I aimed to pick up treats for Illa. Her school recital loomed soon, and I envisioned my girl outshining the rest. I took the wheel of the pristine white convertible coupe Grandpa had gifted me and made my way to a high-end department store right in the heart of the city. The old feelings of embarrassment and discomfort had vanished completely. I strode forward with assurance. The poise of a sophisticated woman now felt like an extension of myself. While browsing a posh kid's apparel shop and selecting a rosy princess gown for Illa, a piercing voice I recognized rang out from behind. "Oh, look at this. It's the vice president herself. You seem right at home in fancy rides and spots like these." I spun around to face her. Eliza Sterling, Damon's paramour, but she had company. Hanging onto her arm with clear fondness was Damon. He appeared gaunt and worn out, though his tailored suit remained top tier. As our eyes met, a flicker of shock and unease flashed in his gaze, swiftly concealed by a facade of detachment and chill. Eliza, on the other hand, made no effort to mask her jealousy and aggression, eyeing me up and down. Her stomach protruded noticeably, and she arched it forward on purpose, as if eager to flaunt it. Shocked, are we? Thought you could bar us from upscale venues like this? Naturally, someone like you, who's likely only known bargain basements, would be floored. I held my tongue, offering just a faint grin. No point in descending to her level with a spat. My quiet demeanor only fueled her rage further. "Damon, check this out. Elevated to VP, and now she snubs us." She nestled against his arm, lips pursed in a sulk. "Perhaps she's still bitter over you ditching her. After all, how could a barren older lady hold on to a guy when she can't even bear him a child? Had enough." I finally spoke up, locking eyes with Eliza in a tone that stayed even but frosty as winter. "I've got no interest in wisdom from a side piece like you, so could you please move out of the way? Excuse me. You insolent. Who's the side piece?" Eliza's cheeks burned red with fury. "I'm Damon's fiancée and carrying his heir. You're the outsider here." She lunged toward me, but Damon held her back. "That's sufficient, Eliza. No scenes in public." His words carried exhaustion. He regarded me with a tangled look. "Sophia, there's no need for this drama. It's all in the past." "Indeed, it's ancient history," I shot back. "So rein in your partner and keep her from yapping and harassing folks." With that, I grabbed the outfit I'd picked and proceeded to the register. Deliberately, I fished out the ebony card from Grandpa, a mark of boundless authority. The sales associate's demeanor shifted immediately upon spotting it, bowing slightly in respect. Eliza and Damon went ghostly white at the sight. I realized the gesture was somewhat juvenile, yet essential. It drove home that our roles had flipped entirely. Once settled the bill with the bag in tow, I exited the premises without a backward glance. I passed them by like mere nobodies. Yet after a short distance, Damon's voice halted me. "Sophia, hold on." I paused but kept facing away. Footsteps drew near. I acknowledged my error. There was desperation in his plea. "But spare my future, I beg." The business teeters on collapse. A single word to your grandfather. Couldn't you intervene? I pivoted gradually, meeting his stare as a sardonic curve touched my mouth. Destroy your world. Recall the schemes you and your kin plotted against me, pilfering my funds, snatching my child. Against that, your firm's downfall is trivial. But it represented my everything, my prime years, my devotion, who makes me whole again. I cut him off curtly. Count yourself lucky it's ending here. Push my limits further, and your next stop won't be the markets, but behind bars. My retort hit Damon like icy rain, his face drained of color. He retreated a pace, speechless. I refused to linger another moment. Wheeling about firmly, I departed, abandoning him dazed in the throng. The run-in had soured my mood. Still, it underscored one truth. Damon was terrified, deeply so. He was plummeting, and I sensed my chance to retrieve my daughter loomed close. That clash in the store solidified Damon's dire straits. Axing every deal with the Monroe Group proved fatal for Golden Future. Additional backers pulled out, collaborators severed ties. The venture he and Eliza had erected using my resources was capsizing, yet a desperate animal fights hardest. Rather than own his defeat, Damon staked everything on one last ploy. He threw a lavish soiree at a premier midtown hotel. On the surface, it served as a client thank you event and a pitch to lure funding for a cutting-edge tech initiative. In truth, it represented a frantic effort to rescue his failing business and draw in unsuspecting backers. This detail came to me via Mr. Davis's web of connections. Once I heard it, a daring notion sparked in my thoughts. Rather than merely watching his show unfold, why not transform his spotlight into his ultimate reckoning? Right away, I discussed it with Grandpa and Mr. Davis. It's a prime chance, mister, Davis remarked, his gaze lighting up. With investors, allies, and reporters all in attendance at once, revealing his real nature on the spot would hit far harder. 1,000-fold more than some sterile court proceeding. He'd face total social ruin, with zero room for alibis. Grandpa nodded in approval, though he voiced a mild worry. Doesn't that scheme carry too much danger? What if the trapped fellow lashes out at you? No need to fret, Grandpa, I replied with assurance. I won't head there solo. We'll handle every detail flawlessly. This marks the closing scene. The strategy got shaped with precision. To start via an intermediary, I pretended to represent a Singapore-based VC firm keen on Damon's cutting-edge venture. My contacts dangled a $35 million pledge before him. For Damon at that moment, it felt like a heaven-sent rescue. He bit immediately, no second thoughts. Thrilled, he forwarded the full project specs and company pitch to the fake fund. Unbeknownst to him, Monroe Group specialists dissected it all, piling on proof of his fraud. Next, I let him know the fund's rep would show up at the gala to ink the deal formally. That intel pumped Damon up even further, deepening his faith. He burned through his dwindling cash to stage an opulent bash aimed at wowing the money folks. He reached out to ex-associates who ditched him, aiming to reclaim his status. Plus, he roped in reporters from top news sources, betting the night would launch his epic rebound. Little did he suspect those invitees would witness his collapse. Come party evening, the luxury hotel glowed under brilliant illumination. The grand hall hummed with energy. Damon and Eliza greeted arrivals at the door, beaming with poise. They came off as a dominant duo riding high on triumph. Eliza sported a sleek cocktail dress that showcased her late-stage bump on purpose. She glided around, giggling and mingling with attendees, playing the perfect host. As festivities hit full swing, the main doors swung wide. I stepped in, my entrance briefly hushing the crowd. Every stare locked onto me. My choice was a sleek yet sophisticated ebony gown. Clinging to my frame, paired with an artful chignon that exposed my graceful neck and glittering diamond accents. Bold cosmetics sharpened my crimson lips and piercing stare. Flanking me stood Grandpa, trailed by Mr. Davis and a pair of security men. Spotting the Monroe Group head stirred even greater shock, sparking louder buzz. Damon and Eliza's grins turned rigid upon seeing us. Color drained from Damon's features. He rushed over, words tumbling out awkwardly. "President Sophia, what's brought you here?" I curved my lips into a grin, one sure to chill his veins. "Can't we join in?" Word got around about Golden Future's key gathering tonight, complete with a major Singapore backer. As an entrepreneur, skipping a prime chance to observe felt impossible. But we never extended you an invite. Is that so? I lifted the ornate card clutched in my fingers. Then explain this. Probably a slip-up by one of your staff. Damon went mute. He sensed my intent to rattle him, yet with the throng watching and Grandpa right there, he stayed powerless. Swallowing hard, he mustered a grin and led us to the reserved elite seating. The event rolled on, yet the vibe shifted entirely. Focus deserted the hosts, Damon and Eliza, zeroing in on our spot instead. Whispers spread, fueling wild guesses about my return, maybe a truce or a stark signal. The snare was primed, the platform set. I settled in serenely, sampling my drink, while eyeing Damon's tense, bewildered expression. The prime show, the climactic, most riveting finale, loomed just ahead. At the evening's height, Damon ascended the platform. Rallying his poise, he gripped the mic and launched into his address. He described Golden Future's goals and drive, spotlighting the groundbreaking tech initiative set to reshape everything. He sketched an optimistic, glowing path to captivate the funders. Up front, Eliza gazed at him, brimming with awe and satisfaction. Lost in their dream of glory's revival, they missed the impending drop of the veil. And tonight, Damon declared, voice thick with feeling, we are privileged to host a vital backer from Singapore. This partnership will be the wing that propels Golden Future to soar even greater heights and distances. Right in the midst of his fervent address, the massive LED display behind him, which had been broadcasting the firm's emblem, abruptly went dark. A ripple of whispers spread across the grand hall. Damon, thrown off balance, spun around in confusion, unsure of the glitch. He signaled frantically to the tech crew, but got no reply. Then, to the shock of all present, the screen flickered back to life, not displaying the Golden Future insignia, but revealing a stark image of my battered face, marked by bruises and wounds, eyes puffed up, and my leg immobilized in plaster. It was the snapshot from the morning following that horrific evening. Beside it, bold white text declared, "This is the real essence of affection." The venue plunged into utter quiet. The ambient tunes halted. The crowd froze, eyes locked on the display. Damon's complexion on the platform drained to ashen. He jabbed a shaky finger at the monitor, muttering incoherently, "What's going on? Kill it. Shut it down immediately." Yet it was far too late. The feed shifted to a new display. Now a grainy surveillance clip played, capturing Damon yanking my hair and delivering a savage kick in our humble flat. The footage was far from crisp, but his brutal actions stood out unmistakably. The hushed murmurs in the hall escalated to gasps of outrage and dismay. Heavens, what a monster! He appeared so ordinary. Eliza, seated in the crowd below, sat rigid. Her gaze darted between the screen and Damon, etched with terror. The revelation wasn't finished. More images surfaced. Snapshots of Damon and Eliza in blissful moments, cheerful family shots featuring their hidden child, alongside thick ledgers detailing how my $500,000 had funneled into his business. For the ultimate strike, an audio clip blared. The voices reverberated through the space. It captured Damon and Eliza plotting their deception, scheming to exploit me as an endless source of funds. That lady is gullible and believes everyone. She's a pushover. Just request the cash, and she'll hand it over, no questions asked. Damon's tone dripped with arrogance and disdain, filling the air. As the tape concluded, pandemonium broke out. The hush transformed into a torrent of rage. Jeers and scornful glares targeted Damon and Eliza. Fraudster, vile creature, crook. The backers and associates who had earlier hung on his every word now regarded him as a fiend. Several rose and stormed off. Others whipped out their devices to film. Damon remained rooted on the dais, as if thunderstruck. Shudders racked his frame from crown to sole. In mere moments his world had crumbled. From his vantage he fixed me with a stare brimming with malice and despair. He realized this was all my orchestration. At that point I rose steadily and ascended the stage. I seized the mic from a bewildered attendant. Locking eyes with Damon, I declared in an icy tone, audible to the entire assembly, "Damon Garrett, your act was impressive, but the show's over." I faced the gathering. My delivery grew bolder. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Sophia Hemphill, wed to the individual before you. The glimpses you've witnessed are merely a fraction of the reality. I'm not here today to dwell on my suffering, but to expose a cunning fraudster and tormentor, masquerading as a thriving business leader." I brandished a stack of documents. What I hold are the full records of Golden Future's deceptions, misappropriations, business swindles, and fiscal dodges. That cutting-edge venture he touted is just a fabrication to pilfer your investments. "Be quiet," Damon bellowed like a cornered animal. He lunged toward me, but my pair of security men held him back. All he could do was thrash futilely and spit curses. Down in the audience, Eliza grasped that the damage was done and attempted to sneak away from the event, leaving her partner to face ruin alone. The client gala and funding presentation had morphed into Damon's worst nightmare, a public shaming beyond imagination. In the midst of the uproar, as Damon kept shouting while pinned by the guards, a squad of officers in uniform materialized at the doorway. Their arrival quelled the noise. At the forefront stood a senior lawman with a grave demeanor. Flanked by two subordinates, he strode purposefully to the platform. The throng yielded a path automatically. He halted before Damon and presented a stamped warrant. "Damon Garrett, you're being taken into custody on charges of fraud, theft, grievous battery, and business deception. You need to come with us to the station for questioning." Each phrase from the authority felt like the decisive nail in Damon's coffin. He ceased his resistance. His form sagged entirely, and he gazed vacantly with lifeless eyes. He understood the end had come. Two enforcers stepped forward and snapped cuffs around his wrists. The sharp clink of the metal echoed. The clank of the handcuffs reverberated through the hush, much like a tolling knell signaling a wrongdoer's downfall. "No, it wasn't me. She laid a snare for me," Damon whispered without realizing it. Yet nobody paid attention any longer, Doug. He was led away amid the throng that had previously cheered and revered him. His posture slumped like that of a broken hound. The grand hall's entrance swung shut, sealing the fate of yet another shattered existence. Meanwhile, a separate squad of officers reached Eliza Sterling's opulent residence. She'd barely escaped the gala when retribution caught up, leaving her reeling from the upheaval. Overwhelmed by the chaos and her nearing due date, Eliza shed her former haughtiness and resistance. Confronted by the detective's inquiries, she crumbled swiftly and revealed the full truth. She owned up to scheming the deception alongside Damon, admitting that the glittering prospects were merely a facade for laundering funds. In exchange for leniency, she surrendered every financial record, paperwork, and backup proof she'd stashed away for her own safeguard. She turned on her partner without mercy. The saga pressed on. At the event, once Damon had been detained, his parent, Clarissa Garrett, there as the would-be in-law to the executive, couldn't withstand the blow. Witnessing her cherished offspring in restraints and her visions of fortune dissolving into thin air, she let out a cry before collapsing right there. Attendees hurried to her aid and summoned medical help. She was carted off in a stupor. The elaborate scheme she and her boy had woven culminated in ruin for their household. Retribution from above may tarry, yet it inevitably unfolds. The offender, the partner in crime, and the supporter, all the guilty parties, ultimately face their reckoning. I observed the entire scene quietly from the platform. Within me stirred no thrill of triumph, only an odd tranquility. Fairness had at last prevailed. My grandfather drew near and rested his palm on my arm. "It's finished, my dear girl." I inclined my head. A droplet traced my face, though now it signified release. I'd weathered the tempest, and serene horizons lay ahead. Over the ensuing weeks, Damon's affair dominated headlines. Backed by undeniable proof and Eliza's admissions, his offenses surfaced entirely. Reporters unearthed his history, how an eager youth from modest roots evolved into a cunning fraudster, targeting unsuspecting affluent ladies, masquerading as a tycoon. The public recoiled in shock and fury upon discovering his genuine nature. I, once branded the heartless spouse, emerged as an icon of resilience, a woman battling for righteousness. The earlier barbs morphed into admiration and support. Envelopes and notes poured in from strangers, many females sharing how my ordeal had motivated them to escape harmful bonds. I realized my struggle had transcended the personal. Half a year on, the proceedings against Damon Garrett and his co-conspirators unfolded openly at the National Court. The matter drew unprecedented scrutiny from citizens and reporters alike. By dawn, the vicinity swarmed with press and spectators. As the aggrieved party and key testifier, I appeared at the hearing. Dread and unease had faded. I stood ready to confront history and behold equity in action. Dressed in a refined ivory ensemble with subtle cosmetics that conveyed poise and assurance, I stepped inside. Every gaze fixed upon me. I proceeded steadily to the accuser's area and took a seat beside Mr. Davis. Damon, Eliza, and Clarissa occupied the accused section, looking utterly forlorn. Damon appeared worn out, his locks streaked with silver and features hollowed. He avoided raising his chin. Eliza, her abdomen greatly distended, continued weeping. My ex-mother-in-law, confined to a chair from stroke complications, bore a contorted expression and struggled to articulate. Solely her stare, aimed at me, seethed with animosity. Proceedings commenced. The state's attorney recited the accusations, outlining every violation: spousal assault, deception, misappropriation, slander, collusion. For each count, the robust materials we'd supplied were displayed: recordings on video and sound, transaction logs, fiscal reports, and accounts from observers. During my testimony, I ascended the platform and recounted events with steady clarity, sparing no detail. I described the prolonged hardships, the mistreatment, the disloyalty, and their vicious plot. Tears stayed absent. My tone held an eerie composure, for I now embodied not a supplicant in pain, but one reclaimed, insisting on accountability. Upon concluding, a profound quiet enveloped the chamber. I discerned empathy and wrath in the countenances of the bench, the panel, and the assembly. When Damon's opportunity came, he hung his head and, in hushed tones, acknowledged every allegation. Denial was futile. He merely sought mercy, imploring a fresh beginning to atone for the child soon to enter the world. Eliza, in floods of tears, pinned the fault on Damon alone, insisting she'd merely fallen under his spell. She begged for a milder punishment. Eliza's absence from the proceedings stemmed from her pregnancy. Yet the trap had been set, and there was no way for anyone to evade the consequences of their wrongdoing. Following a grueling multi-day hearing, the moment of judgment arrived at last. The presiding judge, a dignified older gentleman with a grave expression, proceeded to deliver the ruling. In light of a thorough review of the proofs and witness accounts, this tribunal imposes the ensuing punishment. The defendant, Damon Garrett, stands guilty of severe battery, intensified swindling, and slander, resulting in a 20-year term in state penitentiary. 20 years, nearly half a lifetime's worth. Such was the toll Damon faced. Upon hearing the pronouncement, he collapsed in his seat, burying his face in his palms while shaking uncontrollably. The defendant, Eliza Sterling, is found guilty as a conspirator in the fraud, mitigated by her admission of guilt and her expectant condition, leading to a 7-year stint in federal custody. 7 years. Her child would enter the world and grow up behind bars. That marked the retribution for a woman who had callously shattered someone else's joy. The defendant, Clarissa Garrett, is deemed guilty of slander and obstruction, considering her medical state, and receives a 3-year probationary term. The gavel came down with force, sealing the conclusion of the matter. Fairness had prevailed. I let out a deep breath of relief. Glancing toward Grandpa in the spectator section, I saw him give a subtle nod, his eyes gleaming with restrained delight. As we exited the building, a swarm of photographers' lights flashed in my direction once more. This time, however, it wasn't prying inquiries, but rather cheers of support. I skipped any media chats. Instead, I quietly slipped into the vehicle and departed from the site that had reckoned with my history. The fight was finished, and victory was mine. Though the legal proceedings wrapped up, their echoes persisted. Damon's household lay in ruins. Yet for Illa and me, it signaled the start of a fresh path, a path focused on mending our scars and reconstructing our existence. Even though I'd triumphed in court, the emotional scars, particularly Illa's, remained profound. The young one, having endured violent episodes and a sudden parting, had turned withdrawn and timid. She frequently jolted awake in the darkness, crying out for me. Witnessing her distress tore at my core. I recognized that securing the verdict was merely the first step. The real priority now lay in aiding my little girl to reclaim her joy and purity. I chose to pause my responsibilities within the organization for the time being. My aim was to devote every moment to Illa. We consulted the top pediatric therapist in New York. With the expert's advice, I mastered the art of attentive listening, soothing her anxieties through affection and stability. Thus, our path to recovery commenced. I whisked her away to destinations featuring azure waters and powdery beaches, as well as grand peaks. Together we erected sand fortifications, launched kites into the breeze, and admired twilight skies. My goal was to reveal to her that beyond the shadowy experiences she'd known, the globe brimmed with wonders. We joined creative workshops. We sketched with pigments, tinkled on the keys, and shaped dough into forms. I encouraged her to unleash her feelings via hues and melodies. Gradually, I noticed Illa transforming. Her giggles increased, her chatter flowed freer, and the bad dreams faded. She reverted to the vibrant, endearing child of old. And as I nurtured her recovery, I mended my own spirit. Staying close to her, nurturing her, and offering boundless love patched the emptiness within me. I ceased dwelling on old grievances or resenting Damon. I grasped that clinging to bitterness would only prolong my suffering. Letting go wasn't for his sake, but for my own serenity. In addition to tending to my child, I turned focus inward. I enrolled in sessions for yoga and mindfulness. Steady inhales and fluid poses restored harmony to my physical and mental state. I delved into volumes on wisdom, mental health, and purposeful existence. It dawned on me that life held endless fascinations to uncover. I shed my isolation. I reconnected with longtime companions over beverages and shared conversations. Moreover, I forged bonds with fresh acquaintances in professional circles. These were resilient, self-reliant females. They illustrated diverse routes to fulfillment. Contentment needn't derive solely from romance. It could spring from professional pursuits, personal enthusiasms, and self-mastery. One afternoon, Grandpa summoned me to his office. He presented a dossier. Sophia, inside are documents for various philanthropic initiatives backed by the company. Review them and select the one that touches you deepest to oversee personally. I believe you're ready to contribute to the greater good. I scanned the contents. Options included constructing educational facilities for kids in remote communities. Another involved erecting affordable residences for underprivileged households. Then my eyes fixed on the Serenity Home Initiative, a haven offering aid to females and youngsters escaping household abuse. My pulse quickened. This felt right. This was my calling. I yearned to leverage my narrative, my trials, to uplift others facing parallel ordeals. I aimed to assure them that we weren't isolated in that struggle. Indeed, following every tempest, the sunlight inevitably emerges. The process of recovery extended beyond merely soothing the hurt. It involved converting that hurt into resilience, into a powerful driving force, and I had discovered my direction. 3 years had passed. It wasn't an extended period, yet it sufficed for the agony from the gravest injuries to fade and for the turmoil within my soul to evolve into a tranquil pond. Folks frequently claim that time mends all wounds. However, I came to realize that time by itself accomplishes little. It's merely an interval. How we choose to populate it, with restoration or with decay, rests on our determination and initiative. I opted to infuse it with optimism. Layla and I had embarked on an entirely fresh chapter, with each phrase inscribed using the essence of tranquility and mirth. My precious child, who once endured the most nightmarish spectacle, had blossomed into a confident, radiant second grader. The shadow of terror in her gaze had vanished entirely, supplanted by a vivid, inquisitive, and sparkling delight in existence. She stopped jolting awake in the night or weeping at sudden sounds. Rather, each dawn she enveloped me in a firm embrace, sharing the whimsical confidences of her youthful realm. And when she stumbled, she rose independently, grinning as she assured me, "I'm fine, Mom." Observing her in her school attire, locks tidily arranged, babbling about her classroom adventures, confirmed that my resolve to persevere to the finish had been wise. I hadn't merely secured fairness for myself, I had restored my daughter's full, untainted youth. The initiative closest to my heart, Serenity Home, had thrived as well. From humble beginnings as a modest aid hub, it expanded into a robust alliance and a shared sanctuary for countless underprivileged women and kids. I transcended the role of distant benefactor to become their ally, confidant, and fellow traveler. Weekly, I devoted 2 evenings to the facility, not for oversight, but to absorb their narratives. I hear from a lone parent who, after a decade of mistreatment, courageously fled with her pair of youngsters. With sobs, she recounts how my tale, glimpsed on TV, empowered her departure. In that instant, she reflected, if she managed it, why not me? I'm human too, and I merit joy. I hear from a 17-year-old who forfeited her education to wed an affluent yet violent spouse. She sought refuge at Serenity Home during a raging evening, arriving penniless and shattered. These days, she's resuming her studies gradually, pursuing her aspiration to design apparel. Each account, each sliver of existence I meet, serves as a reflection of my history. I recognize echoes of myself in their dread, their suffering, and their tentative optimism. Aiding them represents my ongoing self-mend, and I grasped anew that the optimal method to surmount sorrow isn't concealment, but reshaping it into a beacon illuminating paths for those adrift in obscurity. Occasionally, during peaceful interludes, my thoughts drifted to Damon's kin. Without pursuit, updates about them filtered through to me. Rumor held that Eliza, post-incarceration, had discreetly departed the metropolis with her boy. She relocated to a remote settlement, adopted a new identity, and launched a fresh existence. Her child likely remained her sole anchor for endurance. My ex-mother-in-law, ravaged by sorrow and ailment, ultimately passed solitary in a care facility. As for Damon, 2 decades behind iron confines is a substantial penalty. He's atoning for his transgressions in isolation. Hatred or triumph no longer stirs in me. The fury from bygone days has ebbed, yielding to a near icy detachment. They authored their own conclusions. History lingers as history, akin to a deluge that erases all, depositing merely the residue of forgetfulness. I mastered release, not absolution for them, but liberation for my spirit. With Grandpa's steady mentorship, my role in the enterprise ceased being an ordeal or test. It transformed into my fervor. I demonstrated to all, and crucially to myself, my ability to thrive independently. I outgrew being merely the executive's kin. I emerged as Sophia Monroe, head of Monroe Group, who adeptly steered through an international financial downturn, sealed a multi-million-dollar pact with Japanese collaborators, and broadened the Monroe imprint across Asia. Career triumphs bestowed fiscal autonomy, yet my deepest fulfillment persisted in those unadorned instances with loved ones. On one sunny weekend, with azure skies and a crisp sea gust, Illa, Grandpa, and I ventured to California's shoreline. Opting against opulent lodging, we secured a modest seaside cottage adorned with bougainvillea blooms. As dusk descended leisurely, it bathed the heavens and waters in amber hues. Illa constructed an enormous fortress from sand alongside neighborhood youngsters. Her pure giggles blended with the surf's rhythm, weaving a melody of harmony. Grandpa and I occupied a timber seat, silently beholding her. Grandpa had grown frail with years. His tresses gleamed snowy, yet his eyes retained sharpness, and his grin warmth undiminished. He had shed the burden of a vast enterprise. In the retirement community, his greatest delight now came from nurturing the garden, diving into books, and spending time with his sole great-grandchild. "See her there," Grandpa remarked, a genuine glow lighting up his gaze. "She reminds me so much of her great-grandma, always bright and bursting with vitality." I grinned and rested my cheek against his lean frame, a pillar of unyielding backing despite its fragility. "Grandpa, I'm so grateful for your constant presence, for pouring your all into my little girl and me." "Nonsense, child," he replied, gently running his fingers through my locks. "You've carved out your own joy. You're the toughest, most enduring soul I've ever encountered." We lingered like that, spanning 3 generations, bound by ties of affection and devotion that outshone mere kinship. Suddenly, a rich, welcoming tone broke in from nearby. "Good day, Mr. Alexander. Sophia, I trust I'm not intruding." I pivoted around, and unexpectedly, my pulse quickened. There stood Marcus, the skilled designer I'd crossed paths with during the Serenity Home Initiative. He wasn't there on business, but as a dedicated helper, investing his spare hours in mending and crafting homes for women in need. He was compassionate, seasoned, with a truly generous spirit. Aware of my history, he'd never regarded me with sympathy or intrigue, only with esteem and appreciation. "Marcus," I replied with an easy smile, "just enjoying a walk. Want to come along?" Grandpa eyed us both with a sly grin, rising with the aid of his walking stick. "I'll check on how Layla's fortress is shaping up by the shore. You two chat in peace." He ambled off toward the water, granting us solitude. Marcus settled next to me. We observed the sun dipping low in companionable quiet, a hush brimming with tranquility and profound connection. "You seem transformed today, Sophia," Marcus observed abruptly, not the commanding executive from the boardroom, nor the committed volunteer at the shelter. "And what do I appear as?" I inquired, intrigued. "You come across as utterly calm, at ease," he answered with honest warmth, much like the ocean settling after turmoil. Unbidden, a smile crossed my lips. No one had phrased it quite that way before. In his company, I didn't have to feign toughness. I could simply exist as a regular person, bearing her scars and vulnerabilities. Our gazes locked, and I sensed a fresh, genuine affection starting to stir within me. Fear of romance had faded. I'd come to see that pain doesn't stem from love alone, but from choosing the unfit partner. I merited true affection. I merited fulfillment. I gazed at the skyline where the sun had vanished, yet lingering beams still painted the heavens in vibrant, promising hues. And I realized a brighter dawn awaited with the morning. The path ahead remained a mystery, maybe a rewarding romance or fresh trials. Yet after so long, dread had lifted. For the first time, I felt prepared to embrace whatever came, arms wide. The tempest lay in the past, forward stretched only clear horizons. Beloved audience, having followed Sophia through her turbulent path, our emotions surely swirl with intricate feelings. We've burned with fury at Damon's brutality. We've ached seeing Sophia plunge into sorrow, and we've celebrated as she emerged, renewed from the ruins. Though imagined, this tale imparts deep, tangible insights for our own paths. Insights that serve as guiding lights and wells of fortitude amid life's twists. The foremost and maybe deepest takeaway is to never stay hushed or linger in shadows. Endurance yields no harmony. It merely allows harm to fester and expand. Sophia erred by weathering the abuse for years, believing her quiet would safeguard her household, her child. But truth revealed the contrary. Abuse, once ignited, doesn't fade away. It escalates, growing harsher. Ila's quivering words, "Grandpa, Mommy's going to die," delivered the harshest awakening. It reminds us that rescue often arises not from waiting, but from a single bold step. Never undervalue the strength in seeking aid. We ought to instill in our kids and ourselves that confronting wrong and harm, reaching out, isn't frailty, but the ultimate drive for endurance. The next insight concerns transformation's might and personal value. Sophia's world shifted only when she chose to evolve. That shift wasn't sparked by fancy attire or her executive role alone. It sprang from her core, from grasping that she warranted dignity, that joy was her right. Once you claim your value, others perceive you anew. This narrative illustrates that wealth and influence aid us, yet they're hollow without a discerning intellect and steadfast resolve guiding them. Sophia channeled resources not for vengeful fury, but to gain wisdom, secure justice, and evolve from sufferer to the lead in her own battle. That's authentic riches, and maybe the most compassionate. A key insight from this tale lies in how we confront success and mend our scars. Sophia had every chance to gloat over the collapse of Damon's clan and spend her days in luxury and ease, yet she chose otherwise. She channeled her suffering into empathy and turned her fortune into a means of supporting those facing comparable hardships. The Serenity Home goes beyond a mere philanthropic effort. It stands as an emblem of renewal, showing that amid life's tempests, people can emerge more resilient and kinder. Real triumph isn't marked by an adversary's defeat, but by rising resiliently afterward, gazing back at history with calm, and stepping into tomorrow with a welcoming spirit. This path involves converting anguish into fortitude and individual setbacks into communal benefits. I suspect many, both men and women, will see echoes of their own lives in these events. Maybe you're enduring some hurt at the moment. Maybe injustice leaves you feeling helpless in the face of life's cruelties. Keep in mind that solitude isn't your reality. Have the courage to speak out, seek support, and above all, trust in your inherent value, since the most radiant sunrise invariably follows the deepest darkness. How does this narrative strike you? Which teaching touched you deepest? Drop your reflections in the comments below. Your words could offer powerful inspiration and helpful guidance to another in need.